There's a particular kind of loneliness that doesn't look like isolation. It looks like confidence. It looks like composure. It looks like being the steady one. You can be surrounded by people, respected, depended on, trusted, and still think quietly, no one actually understands the full complexity of me. That's not dramatic. That's not narcissistic. That's not unique to sexuality or status. It's common among strong people. High functioning women, emotionally regulated men, first generation professionals, leaders, caregivers, minorities who had to grow up early, LGBTQ individuals who learned control before comfort. It's not that no one cares. It's that no one reaches all the way in. And sometimes you don't let them. Let's say something clearly. There is a difference between being admired, being depended on, being respected, being understood. Strong people often get the first three, rarely the fourth. And that becomes structural loneliness. From early on, many strong people discover something powerful. Regulation earns approval. Control earns safety. Composure earns trust. If you were expressive and got corrected, you learned calibration. If you were emotionally aware in chaotic spaces, you became the regulator. If intensity destabilized rooms, you slowed them down. That becomes identity, the steady one. And there's status in that. There's power in that. When conflict rises, you breathe slower. When emotions spike, you lower your tone. When chaos forms, you contain it. People depend on that version of you. They feel safe with that version of you. But dependency limits curiosity. People rely on what stabilizes them. They rarely investigate it. And if you're the regulator, people interact with your strength, not your uncertainty, because you rarely show it. Let's be honest about something subtle. People tend to investigate instability. They lean into mystery. They lean into chaos. They lean into inconsistency. But composure gets categorized strong, stable, good. And once someone is categorized as stable, the nervous system relaxes around them. Relaxation reduces inquiry. People ask fewer questions of the strong. They ask fewer follow ups. They assume. Assumptions replace discovery. If you are articulate, people assume you've processed everything. If you're calm, people assume you're unaffected. If you are self-sufficient, people assume you don't need depth offered back. Strong people are often respected into invisibility, not because others are malicious, but because strength reduces perceived urgency. And humans investigate urgency. That means if you don't display rupture, you don't invite probing. You might want to be known, but if your delivery is measured, your edges hidden, your uncertainty controlled, most people won't push deeper. They take what you offer, and if what you offer is composed, they stop there. That's the first half of the loneliness. Not that no one sees you, that no one sees beyond the version that feels safe. Now let's add the edge. If someone actually did look at you and say, I don't think you let people fully know you, you said your internal reaction would be exposed, slightly irritated, curious. That's revealing. The irritation matters because strong people are comfortable evaluating others, less comfortable being evaluated. When someone sees through the structure, it destabilizes identity. You work to be composed, you work to be controlled, you worked to regulate well. So being told there's more underneath can feel like, are you implying I'm hiding? Even if they aren't. Because strength is your armor, built intentionally. And armor doesn't like being pointed at. But curiosity means something else is happening too. A part of you knows there is more. A part of you knows depth exists beneath the steady surface. A part of you wants to be known, but doesn't want to be taken apart. That tension is important. It means the loneliness isn't about arrogance. It's about guarded access. "7 years. That's a long time to let someone see you uncertain. Not vulnerable in a polished way, not reflective, not thoughtful, uncertain. There is a difference. Uncertainty means, I don't know. I'm not steady right now. I'm not composed in this moment. Strong people allow vulnerability that is processed. They rarely allow vulnerability that is raw. You will tell someone what you struggle with after you've solved it. You will speak about doubt once it's clarified. You will reveal complexity when it's structured. But unstructured uncertainty, that's different. That feels destabilizing. Because if you are known as the regulator, showing dysregulation feels like losing position. There's identity cost in that. You built yourself into the calm one, the steady one, the one who slows rooms down, the one others depend on. If that version cracks, what happens? Do they lose trust? Do they lose reliance? Do they lose respect? These questions sit under the surface, so you don't allow cracks. Not because you're fake, because you're protective. Protective of your position, protective of your identity, protective of the stability you worked for. But protection reduces access, and access creates intimacy. So the more you protect your composure, the less someone touches the layer underneath. You said you prefer being depended on more than depending on someone. That makes sense. Being depended on creates position. It reinforces identity. It confirms capability. It establishes you as necessary. Dependent on someone else reverses power. And strong people struggle with power reversal. Not because they crave dominance, because they fear instability. If you depend, you risk disappointment. If you depend, you expose need. If you depend, you create the possibility that someone may not hold you well, so you hold yourself. And if you hold yourself well enough, no one sees the deep layers. Then loneliness becomes internal. Not dramatic, not loud, just consistent. I don't think anyone fully knows me. That statement is less about them and more about exposure. There's a thought that circulates quietly in strong people. No one can really handle all of me. Sometimes that thought is accurate. Sometimes you've outgrown your environment. Sometimes the emotional bandwidth around you is limited. But sometimes that belief protects you from risk. Because if no one can handle you, you never have to test it. And if you never have to test it, you never have to experience someone failing to hold you. It's safer to assume rarity. It's safer to assume depth mismatch. It's safer to believe you're complex beyond reach. But here's the question strong people rarely ask. Have I actually given someone the opportunity to understand me without already regulating the exposure? Because most strong people don't reveal raw layers. They reveal curated depth. They give the composed explanation, the refined version, the reflective packaging. And that kind of vulnerability still preserves control. Control feels safe, but control inhibits discovery. To be fully known requires something uncomfortable, unmanaged moments. Not chaotic, not dramatic, but unrehearsed. And if you haven't allowed that in 7 years, then the loneliness isn't just about shallowness around you. It's about protected depth within you. There's another dynamic here. When you are seen as composed, measured, articulate, capable, people respect you. Respect feels good. Respect creates distance. Curiosity creates closeness. But curiosity feels invasive to people who value control. So you live in the respect zone. Admired, trusted, depended on, but rarely examined. You regulate rooms well. You articulate well. You carry yourself with structure, and structure discourages intrusion. People don't want to disturb stable architecture, so they don't knock. And you quietly think, no one asked the deeper questions. But if someone did ask, would you open the door fully or manage the conversation into composure? That's the tension, not accusation. Tension. When someone becomes emotionally intense, you often regulate. You lower the temperature, you calm the energy, you bring it back to center. That's a powerful skill. But if you were always the regulator, who regulates you? If you were always the steady one, who steadies you? If you are the container, who holds the container? This isn't philosophical, it's structural. Strong people often create environments where others can lean, but they rarely lean back equally. Not because they don't want to, because they don't know how without destabilizing identity. And that's the loneliness, not abandonment, not isolation, imbalance. Being known is not accidental, it is deliberate. Strong people do not stumble into intimacy, they allow it. And allowance requires risk. Not reckless risk, not emotional chaos, measured exposure. Exposure without over explaining, uncertainty without collapse, need without apology. This is difficult for someone whose identity is built on composure, because composure creates predictability, and unpredictability feels like weakness. But here's the truth. Being known does not require losing control. It requires surrendering image management. That's different. Image management says, I will reveal what reinforces my identity. Being known says, I will reveal what humanizes me. Humanizing yourself destabilizes people who only knew the composed version. But that is not collapse. That is expansion. Not upward, outward. Remember your reaction, exposed, slightly irritated, curious. That irritation isn't ego, it's friction. It's the friction between structure and softness, between identity and access, between competence and uncertainty. When someone begins seeing you deeper, there will always be a moment when you want to pull back. Not angrily, subtly. Because being seen removes the strategic advantage of being the composed one. And strong people are used to being ahead emotionally. Being read levels the field. That vulnerability feels risky. But without it, you will always be admired more than understood. And admired people are often lonely. So what does maturity look like here? Not unraveling, not performing vulnerability, not oversharing, not suddenly becoming emotionally chaotic. It looks like this: letting one person see uncertainty in real time, not after it's solved, not after it's refined, real time. Letting someone ask uncomfortable questions without regulating the conversation away from discomfort. Allowing someone to carry you emotionally once in a while without immediately shifting back into control. That's discipline. That's advanced emotional strength. Because the hardest thing for capable people to do is stop being capable for a moment. Without shame, without fear, without image distortion. You think about not being fully known often. That tells me something important. You don't want surface connection. You don't want shallow admiration. You want depth. But depth requires friction. And friction requires patience. Most people don't go deep because depth is slow. It requires trust, consistency, emotional steadiness. Not just on your side, but theirs. Some people truly won't have the capacity. That's real. Not everyone has depth matching. But if you never test it, you'll never know who does. And if you never test it, loneliness becomes philosophy instead of reality. You start believing, no one can handle the full me, when the truth might be, you haven't let anyone try long enough. Strength is powerful. Composure is powerful. Regulation is powerful. But being known fully is a different kind of power. Not dominance, not admiration, intimacy. You do not lose sovereignty by letting someone see uncertainty. You do not lose authority by revealing depth. You do not weaken your identity by allowing questions. If anything, you become dimensional. And dimensional people are rarely lonely. They are selective, but not sealed. You can remain steady and still be known. You can remain composed and still be touched. You can remain strong and still lean. This is integration. This is maturity. That is the difference between isolation and chosen depth. If you're strong, do not let your strength become your disguise. If you are composed, do not let composure become your wall. If you are capable, do not let capability become your loneliness. Let someone see you, at least once, without rehearsal, without correction, without strategic calibration. Just once, and see what happens. I'm Chris Willingham, and this is Without Permission.